Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it's Zeke here again today to bring you another painting video. So today, as you can see, we have a Kriegsmann on the painting tray. I'm just going to move my paper towel over to the right-hand side because I think it'll be more useful over there. And we're going to start, as we usually do, with a big-ass layer of Van Dyke brown and black. I'm going to use lamp black here. Um, at first, I was afraid of lamp black because it said it had a longer drying time, and as a mini painter, I'm like, oh no, long drying times. But it turns out the long drying time on lamp black, when used as a pre-glaze, just allows a lot of working time on the glaze step. So I kind of do like to have a bit of that mixed in with the Van Dyke brown. Um, Before I had been recommended Mars Black, which is a tinting paint, which also works quite well. Van Dyke Brown is also a tinting paint, just to be very clear on that. But I feel like the mix of the slow mixing paint and the tinting of the Van Dyke just does the trick nicely for me. You can see there were a couple corrections I needed to make here in the, no, why is it not focusing properly? Might have to manually focus pretty soon. There we go. Didn't like that I painted it dark. How long has that focus been off? Oh well. So just getting my all-over coat of Van Dyke Brown and Mars Black, and Lamp Black. Bit more Lamp Black, especially on the face and the helmet and any parts that you might want to be metal in the future. Remember that most of this comes off, so you're not just painting your whole model black here. So vigorously wash that brush off. I could have used my thumb palette here to show you what was going on, but it was just brown and black. In the future, I will be doing that, though. So let's go ahead and, well, get this back into frame. It's so beautiful. And barely visible. Okay, the next step will help that quite a bit. So the next step, I go ahead and take most of that off after, of course, that is, I find a makeup sponge. I guess I have a bunch over here, so let's use a fresh one. So, now I just take it all off, revealing some of that, like, almost white undertone. It's why I prime in almost white, because I'm basically going to paint the model black right away anyways. If you want to take more of this off, you can dip it in some mineral spirits, or use a Q-tip dipped in mineral spirits. Q-tips are great tools for oil miniature painting. A lot of my techniques can be applied to acrylics, but they will work faster and better with oils, probably. I'm not going to say that for sure. Maybe you'll find a way to make them super effective on acrylics, but for now I'm going to assume, no, I need to take away this, like, big white background stuff to really get the model in focus here. There we go. So now you can see he kind of looks all weathered, and what in hell's name? You know what, I'm going to manual focus. There we go, now I control the focus. Perfect. I am the focus now. Okay, so let's get some desaturated blue on my palette here. I'm gonna use this big, thick brush that, if you have a really messy brush, you can always use it as a paint picking up a brush. Perfectly valid. So let's just pick up some white blue that I already have on the palette. This is just white with probably some Prussian blue. Prussian blue tends to be my favorite. Sometimes I use ultramarine instead, but generally I like Prussian. Prussian has a bit of transparency to it. Go ahead and pick up some lamp black and mix it in there. So now I have a black gray with some blue undertones. You can see on my thumb palette there. And I'm going to start desaturating that by adding white. If you have nickel white for this could work quite well. Nickel white is quite good at desaturating and making like an almost transparent paint. I do have nickel white, but I don't have it on my palette, or I do, but I don't know where. I think this might be nickel white down here, actually. You know, let's go ahead and take some of that and add that then. You need quite a bit of it, so you see I just put on a huge chunk of nickel white. Nickel white lightens without desaturating too much, or without affecting the color. It is semi-transparent in a very strange way. And I do actually want a bit more white in that, so I'm going to add some titanium white again. Get this spread all the way across the palette. And you know, when you do this, when you build a color like I'm doing right now, you actually get the full set of highlights and shades along with it. So you can kind of build all of your highlights right away. So let's go ahead and use the brush shaper here and see if this brush is actually usable to paint with, or if it's just going to be my paint picking up brush. Looks like it's pretty terrible, so I'm going to go ahead and wash it off and move on to a brush that can actually maintain a bit of a tip. I have a little bit of paper towel attached to my thumb there for that very reason. This is also a terrible brush. Do I have a brush with a tip? This has a bit of a tip. Good enough. Let's grab a tiny bit of mineral spirits on that. If you think you might have too much mineral spirits on your brush, drop it in a cup that is nearby. I highly recommend this Paint Thumb palette. It is a free 3D printable file. If you want one that is not free, I plan on eventually designing one, but I will constantly lead people to this. I'm going to actually take advantage of some of the shading that's already here and not really paint into there. Maybe just blend the paint in after. This is experimentation on my part. Normally I would just do a full base coat of this, and actually I'm getting impatient, so that's what I'm going to do. Let's put on a full base coat, trying to keep out of the cracks at first, because once you go into the cracks with this paintbrush, it'll start darkening up the brush. And you want to do that, but you want to do that after you're done actually painting all the highest highlights on the model. So the elbow, every little line that is the outside. So you want to start with the highlights no matter what. Let's go ahead and make sure this is staying in focus here. So you can see all these lines here. Just pick them out with the brush, one at a time. Try to keep your hand stabilized on as many things as possible. I have a limited amount I can do because I am recording, but you know, hands on hands on hands on hands. Use a paint handle, use claws, hold your own hand. It might seem gay, but that's all right. Being gay is cool. Enjoy it. So hold your own hand once in a while, I guess. So let's now go ahead and go into those darker areas and kind of pick up some of that stain that I've left behind in there. And as I do that, it will actually kind of automatically darken those areas, as I will be picking up more and more of that Van Dyke Brown / Mars Black mix. If you go with a more watery glaze in this, it will actually pick up considerably faster and darken considerably faster, leaving stronger highlights. But I do quite like this paint scheme fairly washed out. So at this point, I'm just blending in the blue that I've already added and adding very little else. There we go. I do have a macro ring on, so I'm trying to get like as close of a shot on this as possible. Still having a bit of a hard time showing the colors not as being washed out and reflective, but that's an oil paint thing. Oil paints are very reflective until post-varnished. Maybe I can find a filter that can mitigate that or something. But I will try to find that in the near future. Okay, so now I'm going to actually take some of this darker gray and just paint it into the cracks as much as I can. I'm not going to do anything too fancy here in terms of blending it in, because I want to blend with a brush that is more or less clean. And I want to be continually cleaning that brush as I blend. So let's just try to darken up some of these recesses here, some of these little areas in between. Just make sure they're still kind of the same blue. And then let's pick up some of the darkest we have here, add a tiny bit of Mars Black to it even to make it darker still. Or try to, but there's a bunch of light blue in my Mars Black right now. So you see I've created a nice dark paint right there. Take some of that off on the paper towel to get the consistency. Try the consistency on your thumb palette, and then move back onto your model and start painting all the metallics in that nice gray that you've just mixed. Still has the blue in it, so you have a cohesive paint scheme all around. And just anything that you think might be metallic, a gun casing. If it goes on too wet and you want to knock back the shine, go ahead with a dry brush. Just go over and kind of pick up some of the paint that's come off. But before you do that, just apply it everywhere that you need to fairly thickly. The great thing about oil paint is that you can just pick it all back up if you don't want it. So let's keep on applying that gray to everything you can. Apply it to this little grenade, his shoulder pads. Keep picking up more. Make sure that it's wet enough that it's actually coming off your brush pretty easily, or else this process will take a long time. Some of his coat that I missed there, I'm now noticing, and some of the side of this machine now. Grenade. The front of his boots are armored, and those are armored like a Nexus core. With metal, I was going to say. So let's go ahead and grab them. Some of this varnish went on pretty sloppy, or I didn't take it off very nicely, so it's kind of hard for me to see some of the detail. But that is my mistake, and I will work with it. Get this guy in focus here. Grab his boots. You can see it looking pretty good. If you want a more saturated blue, you could add that at this point into the shadows. Let's go ahead and make sure I got this. And then I'm going to start using some of my metallics. In oils, you have to either find interesting rare metallics, because all metallics are kind of rare, or you have the option of mixing your own metallics. Green Stuff World has some really nice true metallic metal pigments, meaning that they are pigments that are actually made of metal instead of just having mica in them. They're not made of gold necessarily, but they do have a much more natural metal finish to them, and I quite like them. So I'm gonna actually just grab his pants in like a dark gray here to just slightly differentiate them. I don't really have a good method for printing Krieg pants, so I almost always just make them gray. Sometimes I make them brown, but then I don't like it, so I always go back to gray in the end. So I just mixed some more of this gray because I decided I needed it for these hand pads right here and right here, because they have little metal pads on their hands. A bit more for the top of this done, and some of the little bits and bobs that I just kind of missed. I could do a few more shadows here, because why not? But if you do some shadows, remember to go a bit back and forth with the highlights and make sure that the highlights stay active. Speaking of highlights, I think I need to go for the mid-tone on my thumb palette here, grab a tiny bit of that, and just throw it on the inside of this arm. And then once again going with the darker tone on my thumb palette up on the right. I've forgotten his chest plate because he is a stormtrooper or an elite of this model set, so he actually wears a little breastplate under there, as you can see. Trying to get that as in focus as possible. There we go. If anyone has tips on how to get a better focal range on my lens while recording video, please do tell me. I might need to just pick up a new lens, but I do not want to break the bank with said lens. Just around this in the gray would be nice. I kind of like keeping this brown if at all possible, especially just that Van Dyke brown that it kind of starts as anyways. Okay, let's go ahead. This coat I'm actually fairly fond of. I'm going to add a tiny bit more blue to the overall mix, or a lot more blue as the case may be, and then I'm going to oh wow. Wow. Then I'm gonna just mix a bunch of that blue and maybe put that into some of the shadows here to get more of a blue read on the coat. So let's bring him into focus again and try to get this coat to actually read a bit more blue. But just by mixing some blue into the shadows and then maybe blending it in. So you can see I have a lot of blue in there. It looks a bit unnatural at the moment, but once we go over with a blending brush, it will look quite good, I swear, maybe. So let's go ahead and grab this into all of the creases of the coat real quick. And anything that needs to be like undershaded, because why not? maybe any shadows. He can have some dark blue in the shadows of his coat, so like kind of under things. And in some of the cracks over here. And again, in some of the shadows. And then what you want to do is you want to either wash off your current brush entirely or find a blending brush. If you use a brush for blending a lot, it's going to ruin that brush a bit. So keep that in mind. Use a slightly rough brush already, but you want the bristles to be fine enough together that they still do get a single area at a time. So use this on like the edge of something. Make sure that it has nothing on it. That it's basically a dry brush as far as you're concerned if you've been painting acrylics for your entire hobby career, and then just kind of start blending that in to get the look more consistent all around and natural. It'll stay mostly in the places that you put it, but it will kind of like spread out a little bit and tint the entire area. So you can now see that coat is reading as considerably more blue than it was. I might have to go back in there with some white highlights. But for now, that is quite nice. Unfortunately, I've kind of ruined my entire color palette here. But I do still have some of this lighter palette, so I'm going to go ahead and pick up some of this lighter blue and just highlight up a tiny bit on the very edges. It is easier to blend highlights in than shadows, so I've actually lost quite a bit of the brilliance to this, but that is all right because I can just kind of, with the edge of my brush along the sides, make sure I'm only grabbing the raised edges of everything. And you can see there, bringing back all those highlights that I had before. Now, when you're using a paint, one thing that I was told that really stuck with me that I think is very true is that if you put a paint somewhere, you might as well put that paint everywhere. And do you know what this gray-blue would be great at highlighting? All this gray. So let's actually go ahead and just kind of edge highlight that. Put a highlight on the gun. Get it to read a bit more like metal. Basically a very, very standard or like slapdash non-metallic metal look. If you want, you can do this in like 2 or 3 layers to get a less slapdash non-metallic metal, a more real non-metallic metal. But for now, I'm just going to kind of try to sell it as a metallic by putting on some dots of this light blue. Why do I think light blue will do for this? Well, because the sky is in a lot of situations, and there is blue in the sky, which would reflect off of any metallic surface. So all the edges that might be caught by a metallic, might as well just pick them out with a little tiny dot of this light blue. I'll be actually putting some metallic paints on this model a bit later. But let's go ahead and pick up some of what's on this helmet. It looks a bit too thick at the moment. Notice that even just taking it off is actually leaving like a nice little highlight there. But let's actually add to that highlight a bit. There we go. And then I will once again highlight the backpack. That's the last thing I really need to do here. A lot of my metals are semi-transparent just because it's the nature of the paints. The nature of the beast, one might say. Let's go ahead and grab a reflection off of this and a reflection off the top of these as well. And since my paint is blended in, I now have a good tone to put on this helmet. I have a cat trying to come over here. Sorry, Noodle, not right now. Okay, now for the browns. Let's go ahead and clean up my palette a bit. Just take a piece of paper towel and wipe it off. Oil paints come off fairly easily. You'll have a bit of a background to blend into, like you can add this blue to other colors that you add in the future, but you don't have to anymore. You have to like fairly put some effort into working it in to get that to happen. Can I focus down that far? Yes, I can. Okay. Just making sure that I have a good shot here. So looking good so far. So let's go ahead and pick up some red that I've put on my palette over here and get that on my thumb palette. Red and blue, we'll try to make a purple, but most red and blues cannot mix into purple and will mix into brown. So as you can see, the blue isn't really interacting that much, which is exactly what we want. I'm also going to take some of like a natural looking orange and mix it in with the red. And then I'm going to slowly start adding bits of lamp black in order, well, or add way too much lamp black right away to get a fairly dark, rich brown here. Add a tiny bit of mineral spirit to that to thin it out and see what you have. And you can see a kind of nice reddish brown on my ring palette there. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to paint the boots and all the leather. I will be going back down into the ground with a layer of Van Dyke brown that's going to be quite thick before I actually highlight it up to make the dirt look a bit more natural. So for now, this brown just goes where there would be leather. So starting with his boots, those will be highlighted up later. Then moving on to his gloves, not including those little hand pads, which are, of course, steel. I also do like to paint this little bit of the gun wood so that he has like a wood stock. Because he could never attend, and he always wanted to attend Woodstock, so he just really, I feel like that's a nice thing to do for him. Grab the leather, put it on the actual mask. I really do like Krieg masks in a natural leather look. Also apply it to the bottom. You won't highlight up the bottom, but you'll have it as the deepest leather tone. I'm going to actually focus this way up close now because I'm kind of getting in to do some like close-up work. This is the closest I can focus on. Well, we'll see how this looks later. I have to work on figuring out a way to make it not look like everything's brown. These grain sacks might as well also have a coat of the rich brown, and so might as well all the wood that will not be mud. The rich brown might be like the overall highlight, nearly the highlight color of the mud itself, or at least in the highlight colors. So really you just want to avoid it on the actual mud. But put it everywhere else that is going to be brown, leather, or wood. And we'll differentiate them later by highlighting them up in different ways. Grab the backs of his legs. He has some leather straps back there. And the leather bits on the back of his building. Remember that you keep some mineral spirits in that little cup when you have extra, so you can thin out your paints and get a bit more life out of them. Grab all those, and then start grabbing the leather bits on his body. Guy has 2 grenades. He is going to war prepared. Grab the leather pouches. And remember to highlight this up with some metals later, because right now it's quite boring. I got some brown on the legs here. I'm just going to try to pick some of that up with a sponge. Okay, ended up turning it into a bit of a lighter color, but I'll go back and gray that out earlier with some blue. But remember that especially oil paint can be removed. All paint can be removed if you make a mistake. It's a bit harder to remove some paints, but you're not stuck with what you've done. Now I'm going to lighten this brown up. Oh, my camera is off, and I don't know how long that has been, so hopefully you guys just skipped through some of that. Probably jostled the HDMI cord. Wonder the depth of field option. So I have this like bright orange now, you can see. I'm going to mix that into the brown to try to get like a nice highlight brown. Brown highlights very nicely with yellows and reds, but like natural yellows and reds. So let's try to get that bit more yellow. Maybe also add a tiny bit of like buff to that. Buff is kind of like a sandy tone, and there you see got like a brownish yellow. If you want, you can adjust that by adding a tiny bit of red for highlights, and now we have like a nice reddish highlight brown. Browns and skins are the same. All skins have a brown base to them, either a brown yellow or a brown red. Usually a combination of both, but those are the two major skin types. And then if you want to highlight them up to be Caucasian skin, you just add more and more of white slash yellow slash red to add layers of that. So let's actually get this wood looking a bit more like wood. I find that wood looks best if you highlight it up to almost like a pure buff or yellow, especially wood that is like cheap wood that would be used on emplacements and stuff. So let's grab some buff and just kind of like get these spikes way up there. And you know, these sandbags could also have the same look, but I'll go and pick up a bit more of this orange and highlight them in that as well. Give them a bit of a different vibe. And then do a little bit of blending here. I have some yellow that I want that I'm going to then add to this in order to make a very, very kind of yellowish brown. And the reason for that is that these little rope spikes have wood spikes seem to have rope on them, so I'm going to go ahead and actually add the rope texture or the rope color to just make it clear that these are tied together with some sort of hempen thing. There you go. Now that I have this yellow, I'm going to mix that into the red brown, and then I kind of get this this weird highlight brown here. It has a lot of yellow in it, and this is very good for wood. Again, cheap wood, not for very rich woods like mahoganies, but for like whatever this little trap door thing is on the base. So gonna go ahead and print that, or paint that, and then to highlight the leather up a bit. I do like leathers to have a bit more red in them, but if you have yellow on the palette, use what you have a tiny bit. Place it where you think it might be needed. Grab some knuckles, grab some fingers. Grab a thumb, you know, wherever you think it might be applicable. Highlight up the mask. There we go, nice layer of highlights there. And let's actually go one more level of white and buff up on this main brown color. This main highlight right here. And then start applying that to the mask as well, the most raised areas. And also to the boots in the same way. Maybe to a couple of the bags. And the little pouches. And any of this that I might have gotten a bit of extra yellow on. Because why not? And to his little back leather bits as well. Excellent. So now I have this whole layered up series of browns, and I'm going to go ahead and use that in order to make myself some dirt. I'm going to go ahead and take some Van Dyke brown, which is a very dirty brown, doesn't have much red or yellow in it. I don't exactly know how to describe it. It's like a blue-red brown. I'm going to mix that in as the darkest brown, the bottom left corner, and I'm going to just apply that fairly wet all over the dirt of the base. Then I find that dirt, like natural dirt, tends to highlight up to a reddish brown a tiny bit, and then have like an almost pale sand look to the rest of it. I'm also going to paint the back of his legs. In this, are the back of his legs supposed to be this color? No, but you know, it's just kind of like nobody's ever going to see them, and it will look natural enough. So then let's move over to this reddish brown. Maybe make a tiny bit more of it by adding a tiny bit more red to this. Yeah, and you see, mixed it now, and I have this nice reddish brown that I'll mix a bit more into. And then that'll be a good highlight color. Just apply it quite thickly over the top of the base. I'll get this in focus so you can see what I'm doing. And just kind of like dab it on fairly thick here. just anywhere you think there might be dirt, and then pick up some of this lighter and throw it onto the very edges of the dirt. Now you have a nice natural kind of looking muddy dirt, done very easily, and you might as well go ahead and apply this in layers to the bottom of the coat and to his boots. Just pick it up at random and apply it at random. It's going to look pretty ugly at first, but then we're going to go through a blending step to blend it into the edges, and it will look all nice and natural. To make them quite dirty, have the dirt go as far up as you prefer. Remember that it will go a bit further up than you initially put it, because you will have to blend it upwards. You can blend it downwards, but it will take a lot longer, and you'll end up with a darker amount of blending on the bottom. Since I have the dirt out, I might as well get some dirt on his gun as well. Probably not perfectly clean, especially on the lower side, because it will actually be reflecting that dirt. So go ahead and just put a bunch down there. And then let's go in with our blending brush. So let's take a look at this real quick just to see how it looks. Already looking pretty decent with that dirt. But let's go ahead and blend it. I said I was going to blend it up because I usually do, but I'm actually blending this down. If you think the blending brush is getting like paint on it that is contaminating it, take it off on the paper towel that you've wrapped on your thumb or somehow attached to your thumb. I highly recommend this. If not, find some paper towel and take it off on there. You can use this dry brush to kind of also apply the dirt here and there and to blend it into places where it wasn't previously to get a better finish on the base and maybe a bit of dirt on his everything, especially on the lower sections because it will reflect. I'm just trying to show that off here. Trying my best to stay in camera. Having my hand planted and having this handle is helping a bit. And there we go. That is done, and I think all that is left is the gold detailing and his eyes. So for his eyes, I'm literally just going to paint some red in there. I know a lot of painters would do like a little highlight, but these eyes are very deep. And I don't trust myself to put a white highlight on top of a red oil paint on eyes that are that deep. So his rhinestone eyes get to be kind of like factories far away if you don't consider it too much. I have to get it fairly close to my face, so I'm trying to like get it in focus and close to my face so I can see. It's a game. It's a game. One second. That's a song my girlfriend listens to all the time. That's not what they're saying, but it sounds like it's saying that, and I love it. Let's grab some of this red and put it onto the palette. I also have yellow on this palette, and red plus yellow can make a good fiery orange highlight. So maybe that's the way I go about doing these eyes. I need to get a light directly behind me, I think, and a fairly high CRI bulb. Fortunately, I do have the resources to do that, and I will be doing that in the future. Go ahead and put the red in the eyes. Probably should have added a tiny bit of white or yellow to this red to begin with, because it looks like it's slightly contaminating this model and getting in there. But remember, you can always pick things up after you put them down, especially in oil paints. So, especially if you're gentle and pick it up right away. So I'm going to add some of this yellow to this red here. So you can see, to kind of grab like a fiery orange kind of vibe. Then I'm going to go ahead and straighten the brush on this little brush straightener and try to get this right in those eyes. Again, I don't think this is the best way to do eyes, but you know, I'd like to think they have some sort of little computerized screen in there. And that's what I'm coloring, so they have like a reflective thing in there. Let's actually put some white in there to brighten it up even a bit more, and then another coat of red, I think. And just like very red this time, like grab some of this cadmium red and just kind of like go. I really can't seem to get this these eyes to... Maybe I should just black them out in the future on these guys. Now they're red, but they're also very wet. And you know, I'll see how that looks when I varnish it. I think on camera it's actually coming out kind of nicely. Let's zoom up here and see if I can't get a better shot of this. When I'm done, I think I'll install the macro lens and give you guys a macro shot. There's a little turntable that I do myself. So far, so good. Let's grab the metallics on here. I have a black metallic that is on this right now that I'm going to mix with a silver metallic that I also have on the board that dries very slowly, actually. It lasts a long time. And I'm going to go ahead and put both of them on my palette, kind of on top of this blue. If some blue gets in there, that's fine. I actually like the idea of some blue getting in this steel that I'm making. And I'm going to apply that pretty thickly over any of the highlighted metallic areas to actually give a metallic finish. But I find metallics actually work best as an effect rather than an all-out paint. So I'm just going to paint in the reflective highlights of where I think the metallics would be and would reflect. And this is also going to blend in and kind of turn the entire vibe a bit more metallic as it goes. So let's also get the grenade launchers here, or not the grenade launchers, the grenades on his belt. Trying to stay in focus again. I've also tried continuous autofocus, but that didn't seem to do the trick for me. But I will see and experiment. At least I have my camera working now, which has taken me a while. So I'm going to go ahead and add those metallics to wherever I think they need to go. And I also think they need to go on the hand pads, which are, at this moment, a tiny bit really boring. Just a tiny bit incredibly boring. I'm going to go with some of that pure bright steel that I was mentioning earlier, which is less steel and more of like a metallic filter that you can put over other paints in order to give it a metallic effect. Works well with the metallic black because it just kind of like creates a steel. Okay, let's go ahead and get some of that paint inside too. And now it is time for the very, very, very small amount of gold. Because I love gold! Okay, oh, wow, just got fresh right on my guy. So I have this custom-made bottle of gold oil paint. You just get metallic pigment and an oil medium and then mix it together until you get what you want. These are the true metallic pigments from Green Stuff World, mixed with Liquin. I would have liked to mix them with linseed oil, but I have run out of linseed oil. I do not know about enough about Liquin to understand the full consequences of what I have done, but I have a lot of gold mixed with it now, so we will see, I guess. So I'm just going to wipe the paint off on the edge of my brush and try to get a really nice close shot here. Actually, I'm going to pause this and move to a macro lens. I'll be right back. Alright, that took a little bit longer than I expected, but I think I got the colors to kind of display a bit more properly. So now is the time to finish it up by doing the last little bit of gold. Because I love gold, and I can't even remember where I put said gold. Might have to open up the big bottle of gold paint again and pick up a little tiny piece of it from anywhere. It is quite strong, and I only need a couple little dots. Get this bag in frame. Get my thumb palette slightly in frame. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe only one I need to show it to you guys. So as you can see, at the very top of his head there, he does have a little Aquila and a little bit of text. I'm gonna wipe off some of this, what's it called? Really trying to get this in focus for you guys. There we go. And he also has a little acrylic on his chest that you want to pick out. You can see right there. And then I'm going to take that off of there and just do a tiny bit of highlighting. Kind of build up some of that leather again on the mask where it's been covered in the red. So let's go with a fairly dark brown on that. Remember, you have some stuff in your palette, some mix in order to thin out your paints. And then I'm going to add a bit of this yellow and pink together in order to lighten up this brown. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight the mask since I'm all zoomed up on it. Trying not to... And there we have it. Finished. In just over, how much time is that? 40 minutes. Wow, that is a bit long for me, one of these guys. But fairly nice looking Kriegsman, well highlighted coat, lots of dirt, lots of good effects in there. No, honestly, maybe the shoes could use a tiny bit more like reddish brown right at the top. Got a bit of extra red in there even. Just do the last little details, anything you find to do. Spin him around a couple times, make sure he's all good. Maybe add some of that gold you were using to that brown in order to kind of add a bit of a rich color to some things. A bit of a shine. All that is gold does not glitter, and all that that glitters is not gold, I guess you could say. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that are wise do not wither. Deep roots are not touched by the frost. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found this moderately informative. If you did, please do like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.